Good evening, everyone. System Chalk here with the 38th episode of Cultist Simulator, The Priest Legacy, playing as Harold Davidson. I've had a little bit of time in between recording episodes, so I'm going to need to review where we're at. If I recall correctly, we still had a big stack of books to go through. We were finishing off the last of the expeditions, although we needed a little bit of cash for that. And I think this affliction, I was hoping to get a vitality, although the clock is ticking on that, so we may not have that option available to us. Let me just see what's coming up. So, Season of Visions, I think we already dealt with a fascination we needed to contend with, and then I believe we still need one contentment for this, which we were going to get from a painting, if memory serves. For some reason I thought there was another restlessness that was going to come up. Now in terms of long-term approaches, we're better off than we were before. I actually sort of thought that our quest for some higher level lore would have taken a bit longer. But we are... so the currently the lock scars that we have and the highest lore that we have are the same. The moth and the heart. But we could directly access the kernel. We could use the kernel's names immediately to get to move up to the right level of edge, and with enough effort, we would actually also be able to push ourselves up to winter and forge. Now, again, if you take a look at the numbers, that would mean that we need to use more health than we currently have access to. That's especially true for the affliction. So that's going to be something that we need to deal with a little bit sooner than I was anticipating. And I'd sort of teased that there is a difficult puzzle to deal with in this DLC. So I'll just say I'm not quite ready to unpack that idea yet, but for those of you who either haven't played The Priest yet or have been struggling with this puzzle, I figure I'll probably give a good advance warning when I'm going to crack that thing open. But if you've been struggling with that and want maybe a little bit of a nudge elsewhere, one thing that I can definitely tell you that was a challenge for me was that I'd grown accustomed to taking certain traits for granted. So, I always kind of highlight, the fact that Count Jannings and the other most of the other mentors are mortal, but Ibn al-Adim is not. And sometimes there can be certain features which maybe when you first look at them, you'll say, well, why is that in the game? Why would I ever want to do that? Or alternatively, you could see, there'll be certain... Basically, there's certain outcomes where you can say, well, why would I ever want to use this? Why would I ever do something like that? Generally, those are the places... And, because you don't need to use them immediately, you put them out of your mind, because Cultist Simulator has a lot that it throws at you. You've got a lot of spinning plates to take care of. But those are usually where the solutions to your problems are hiding. So I won't go any more specific than that. We are going to be going to a point where we are going to be taking advantage of those opportunities, but I figured I'd give people a bit of a chance to maybe make some progress on their own before cracking open the puzzle myself. I'm also enjoying some tea here, so I'm just going to take a quick second for some refreshment, and then we'll be ready to begin the session. All right. So we were going through... Oh, yes, that's right. We were going through the forest, and we'll be able to take care of the Watchers, but I believe we're going to need a knock follower for the hidden door. Of course, we'll bring Neville along for that when the time is appropriate. So things are working the way I'd wanted there. So yeah, really it's just a question in terms of contentment and health in terms of my short-term priorities. And then we've been using Dorothy for charm. We can use Clovette or Leo as well. But in this case, it's as much about generating the vitality as it is the practicality of removing reputation. In this case, it's a 1 in 4 chance of, oh, hey, we picked up a notoriety. What do you know? It's always a little embarrassing when you talk about slim chances of things happening as the game brings it up. And the sharp-eyed among you may have noticed that we got what we were looking for. We did, in fact, provoke the heart event, so good news all around. Let's go to the Orchard of Lights. Dodged a bullet there. And a Pulsing Airs, so this will also turn into Vitality if we need. A Rising Power, a Reassuring Energy, 6th Order Influence, Significant Resonances, or Correspondences. This can be used in some rites to summon minions. The hours have been called unmerciful, but they permit sleepers sometimes to walk in the orchard of lights, where the fruit glows like a sunset, where the roots of the trees are shaped for peaceful rest, where the mist soothes the heart. I was there last night, and the taste of the fruit lingers, sharp and sweet as the passage of spring to summer. So there's the pulsing airs. We've got the heart. So we are going to need to wait a little while for this, but we've got the course of the heart now. Whenever the principle of heart is implicated, I may gain vitality. And again, pulsing airs will sort of decay on its own. Normally, I would want to go back to the mantis at this point, but here I'm going to wait the 30 seconds for the heart, and then we can move on. Our devotion has drawn comment. So the season, one of the reasons for this is the Season of Visions is coming up, so taking this time actually lets me move past the Season of Visions without any trouble. There is always the danger that I get a fascination, and it's a dangerous time to get that simply because, well, I guess the fleeting reminiscence would... Actually, those are expiring. But in any case, usually when you have despair on the table, or fascination on the table, and you're... and then you get a season of despair. Generally, it's best to try and if you have the option, to let one of them pass by, just because it starts absorbing too many things that are useful for getting rid of your negative feelings. Okay. So there's something up ahead. We've made it through the forest. Now, in this case here, I don't think I'm going to throw any more resources at this particular expedition. This is just simply because, again, Neville's essential to the... Well, not essential, but Neville is important to achieving the goal. So if we wind up being overtaken by the Watchers, we may lose someone on the expedition, and I may need to... that could be Neville, and at that point I may not be able to bring him back in time, and that will leave us with either Enid, or we'll need to add 2 more followers, neither of which is ideal. Whereas if I'm patient, if I wait to go past the Watchers, then we just have one person that we need to add, and we'll be able to overcome the challenge. Or have a high chance of overcoming the challenge. Looks like we got another Season of Sickness coming up, so that pulsing air has actually turned out rather well for me. In the House of the Sun, the dance of the angels of glory does not cease. Those who were cast down, wave or wound or snow, are gone from the house. As long as their parts in the dance are filled, they may never return. Therefore let us join hands and add our little steps to the dance. All right. So again, the rate at which I'm earning money through these sermons isn't great. It's, there are faster and better ways to make money. But in this case here, this is working for me. And if we run into problems with the expeditions, we'll worry about that later. For now, I'm just going to use the fact that I've got some passion available to carry on. And we'll speak to their souls, and actually, sorry, we have a fervor we can use as well. The congregation is already in a state of excitement. Any secret knowledge will almost certainly drive them to exaltation. Again, this also potentially brings up the course of the heart, but that's not as important right now. The linesmith makes monsters to defeat the tribune, but the scars of the tribune are each a weapon. So normally I'd be happy to get the air edition, but we have other priorities right now. Okay, on to the Tantra of Worms, which is going to require a translation. The entomologist Julia Zawickowski eventually came to insist that this text was written by insects inhabiting a human skin. She never presented evidence for her claim. Lock the study door, the work begins. Optimism is the spice which saves. So there is an interesting question to be answered here. So if I use my talk verb, one thing I could do is potentially bring bodies in to use on the spider's door. The other thing that I could do is keep using my heart followers, again potentially generating the course of the heart to remove the last of the mystique. Now there is a small argument for doing that just simply because I don't think I'm going to be painting, so I will be generating notoriety through the expeditions, and I will be generating mystique and potentially notoriety through the sermons, but it's basically going to be getting reputation at a rate that is quite a bit slower than we've run into in the past. The other thing that makes this appealing is that because I am using my work slot for painting would generate reputation, but because I'm using my work slot for the sermons and not for the commissions, I'm sort of at a point where, like, I don't need to use the talk for other things. So I think in this case here, even though it's maybe not the most useful activity to do right now, I am going to keep talking about occult business with my heart followers. Not everyone is sympathetic to our aims, but if we have problems with our reputation, our disciple can probably smooth them over. And then, of course, once I feel a little more secure in the position, I can try some other material. But my own heart pumps more strongly today. All I need now is time. Look closer, closer still, closer. Keep looking, closer. Now close your eyes. Our devotion has drawn comment. So of course now the reputation becomes a little bit more pressing. Incidentally, I'm using the tab button for those of you wondering how I'm automatically moving those up. If you mouse over... Oh, I thought it was if you mouse over this, but it's the same as pushing this button here. And last their fervor is spent, what have they made of this night? Okay. Sometimes my words and those I have borrowed move my congregation beyond mere concentration to exaltation. Season of suspicion coming up, so I do want to be a little mindful of my reputation. I'm still going to stay the course on the plan, though. If we get to a situation where the weary detective does come after us with evidence, we're just simply going to use the raw prophet to get rid of it. And as always, we will use passion. So I should maybe also explain why I'm using the heart instead of the moth, because of course the moth is the higher level lore, which means the likelihood of exaltation. Well, again, depending on how probabilities work in Cultist Simulator, it may not actually be that big of a difference. But in this case here, in principle, it makes more sense for me to use the highest lore that I have available. The difficulty here is that if I continue to use Moth, that's going to wind up generating restlessness. Now, generally, I use restlessness as an input to a painting, and that might mean that I wind up with the contentment that I need to get rid of the last of the dread. So that, on paper, would be a very good outcome for me. The drawback is that that's going to be sort of entangled. Entangled with the whole business of excuse me. It's going to be entangled with the whole business of trying to, get rid of the reputation, and basically the painting that I want to do isn't in line with my current goals right now. So I'm definitely going to wind up doing a painting at some point, but right now I don't really want to do that, which of course means that the generation or the potential generation of restlessness winds up being sort of a liability to me. And so that's why I'm not completely minimizing my use of Moth. Obviously I could have used alternatives to Moth inside of the expedition, but for the time being, I'm trying to focus more on Heart for its side effects as opposed to Moth with its potential generation of restlessness. I am in future, though, going to actually use quite a bit more Moth for reasons that you may remember, and if you don't remember, you will see probably within the next few episodes. I will speak to their souls, and if I speak with conviction, their souls may answer me. Their bewilderment is our opportunity, will pass in silent secrecy. So this is where we would add Neville. It's also worth remembering because passion is a Moth aspect. A passionate sermon on Moth is one of the more Mothy things that you can do. I prepared a text for study. All right. So same text as before. The Tantra explains various less than practical countermeasures against the worms, the serpents which are not serpents. Moth and Winter are closest to them, and so understand their weaknesses, but both have their own perils. The Lionsmith crushes them, but that's not recommended for mortals. I always thought if you take a look at the the other documents, and then you can compare this one. I always thought this looked a little wormy. I mean, I'm probably just reading too much into it, but I always thought this was kind of a neat little touch. The sick room grows close and stale. Time to get up. So this isn't too big of a worry because in 39 seconds this is going to become an affliction, but in 27 seconds this is going to become a vitality. So effectively we ignore it. Which of course means that the whole business of trying to generate heart through the other activities isn't as important, but that's another matter. Okay, so we'll add Neville. This is in anticipation of the hidden door. And lucky us, we got another notoriety. Velvet's doing a good job of laundering our reputation, though. I suspect we'll probably be caught with this, but we already have our routine in mind when it comes to new evidence. In the House of the Sun, the dance of the angels of glory does not cease. Those who are cast down, wave or wound or snow are gone from the house. As long as their parts in the dance are filled, they may never return. Therefore, let us join hands and add our little steps to the dance. And we will use the fervor. Again, even if it generates notoriety, we still get some money. The congregation is already in a state of excitement. Any secret knowledge will almost certainly drive them to exaltation. This illness has damaged my health. I will need to rest before I'm fully recovered. So we'll use that vitality right away. All I need now is time. And we call upon the beach crow who sees what is lost. We bear a great power of opening. We'll almost certainly find this hidden door. So it's been a while since we've gone back to the Mansus. I do actually want to go back through the snag door just in hopes of trying to get that knock influence so that I can bring Enid up to a key. We'll see whether or not that turns out, of course. The worms have always been eager to inhabit us. Here are the practices which make us inhospitable to them. There are diagrams. The diagrams are not good to look upon, and none of the practices they depict would allow the subject to survive. Alright, the Concursum Diaries. No, that shouldn't be in... sorry, I went one too high. I don't have Frisian yet, so... The Thirsting Tantra. C.G. Burial, the temperance campaigner, published elements of this in a pamphlet, which had to be withdrawn and destroyed after it became too popular. So we will take our Sanskrit and translate the work. Lock the study door, the work begins. So again, there's no guarantees. I do need to keep an eye on the expeditions, but generally we're in good hands. The congregation has donated generously, and they haven't limited those donations to the collection plate. So as we were talking about funding, we're definitely on an upward trend, and this is purely due to the it's not just the frequency of the sermons, but it's the fact that we've been able to produce income through the fervor. It's never a guarantee that it happens, but the more you do it, the more likely. Wow, we got really lucky with this. I think we're still busted, but at last their fervor is spent. What have they made of this night? I often talk about the in these playthroughs, I often sort of talk about the shaving the 10 seconds off. The tricky part with it, and one of the blocks to potentially doing this sort of activity, is that on its own 10 seconds isn't really felt, and there's a lot of things that you can do to interrupt it in between and not realize the benefits that will come from a strategy like that. So, you know, you've got 60 seconds each turn. Shaving 10 seconds off, you're still going to see the funds move out, and it's really more the long-term application. And again, if you wind up sitting and waiting, if you do a painting in between, there's a number of things that can sort of disrupt the timing that you usually have in mind. So generally, the greatest benefits come after doing this thing several times over, because of course those 10 seconds add up, right? You know, you do six of the sermons in a row, all of a sudden you've now had a full day of rent sort of saved. And the thing is that there's a lot of, it's hard to think of that, right? I know a lot of people tend to talk about this game, how the fact you actually need to manually put work in is a bit of a drag. And, you know, again, that's kind of one of the tests I don't want to say like it's not like there's the, you know, LOL, this game is for smart people kind of, you know, tests that you run on this game. If you enjoy it, you enjoy it, and if you don't enjoy it, you know, it's a shame, but it's obviously not for everyone. But it can be a bit of an indication in terms of whether or not the game is for you, as to whether or not you can sort of get on board with the, you know, the way that the work goes. There's a couple of other games that I play that are like that, but I don't want to spend too much time talking about those. If you're interested, I'll happily mention them in the comments. So in this case here, like in general, the way I approach this is definitely because in most games, when I tend to think about things, I usually like to sort of extend into infinity for a lot of my choices. And it's just usually because if I get thinking of that in that way, and I start kind of going on autopilot when I play a game, the consequence for that is that I've sort of built a system that I fall back on that's sort of designed to produce some maximum that I'm looking for. And then of course, if I make another decision, generally that's viewed in light of, okay, so if I disrupt the system that I have in place right now, is it actually worth it compared to the alternative? So again, I don't want to overstate the value of this rotation with the sermon and choosing the 50-second option as opposed to the 60-second option, but it is one that is working for me because I made a decision here to sort of lock into a very slow trickle of income coming in, and you'll notice that our funds are higher than it was at the start of the broadcast. So, back to the Stag Door, and not a moment too soon. The Stag Door is the Adept's Gate. To pass it is to be initiated into the first true mystery of the House of the Sun. The head Gearby weeps to see me enter where it cannot, but it must let me pass. The scarred valves of the door grind open. Faint lines in stone, a surface that yields to pressure. We found it. The hidden door moves with a grating shudder and a shower of dust. Okay, so we did not successfully get rid of the notoriety, so we're going to be hit. Not only are we going to be hit by it, but we're potentially going to have a second notoriety kicking around to turn that into damning evidence. We are going to get Clovette back on recovering it. Again, it's not as important because we've recovered the health that we needed, but I do still have other things that I'd like to have a clear reputation for. All right, back to the Thirsting Tantra. A disquisition of the many varieties of thirst, their uses, and their effects. And again, I might get lucky, they might pick up the mystique, but in this case I should be anticipating a notoriety getting picked up at any time in the Season of Suspicion. Beneath the stone. The moonlight bleaches the grass to winter. All around the stones loom. Here, in the tumulus side, beneath the turf, is a stone that will rise like a trap door. We must put our backs into it. I've read that sermon a couple of times, so I will spare you the reading this time. And we're going to go right back into it. All right, there's the notoriety. We were going to have one come out of the expedition anyway, so it was bound to happen sooner or later. And a Season of Ambitions is coming up, so this is an inconvenient time to have restlessness because we don't have the reputation to work with, but I have a couple of ideas for that. Chamber inside the tumulus is half collapsed with the years. Fat white spiders crawl from the touch of our lamplight, insolently slow. The stone reliefs are cracked and dripping, but here is the offering hole still with its treasures. Actually, I'm going to change around the plans a little bit. So I'm going to put the Society of the Holy Wound back. So in 12.7 seconds, Clovette will say, okay, nothing. Thank you, Percussagant. Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you, Raw Prophet. Got more Rose Pearl Dust, a Xanthotic Essence. So this is a rather helpful one if I want to get King Crucible. Of course, we also have the Forge of Days painting for that. And the Amaranthine Nectar. So I'll have potentially some uses for that as well. Now, Under normal circumstances, I would actually like to get an expedition going right away, but I am going to need the raw profit to get rid of the evidence. So in this case, I'm going to go to Oriflamme's just to make a little money. No point in wasting the opportunity. So where'd Oriflamme's go? So we'll start by selling the jumble. This oddity is probably worth something, but it's hard to be sure. Mirrors are calm, the sun is steady, the glory recedes. I'm saying if that means anything. No fascination drives your visions. It's over for now. And surprisingly, I got the subtle rupture nice and early. So, in sleep, I ran my fingers along the ridged edges of the stag door's scars. Our company it was that shattered it, Gearby says suddenly. Before the gods who were flesh, the mantis was forbidden to mortals. We were the first no. He begins again to weep his molten tears. I wish that we had not. I wish that I had died in the world. I've forgotten what else he said, but I remember the shape of the fissures in the stag door, and for all of today, doors will fear my touch. Okay. So I'm in a little bit of an awkward position now, but I'm going to make the most of it. So the big challenge I have right now is the percussivant and the raw profit are going to decay a bit. Now, I've got a decent little stack of reputation. It'd be nice if we had one more notoriety, but what I'm going to do here, because we don't get the opportunity to level up a follower, we are going to take the subtle rupture and bring Enid up to a key. So Enid sees what others do not. It is becoming difficult for her, but it is very useful. Only a rare few, those are most suited to service in our mysteries, may achieve this rank. And the Thirsting Tantra. The Tantra describes how the satisfaction of thirsts may allow a mortal to rise into the service of the thirsting power, but warns of the consequences of rejecting those rarer thirsts for common ones. A man who thirsts, O mighty one, whose mind clings to actions in this world, will return from this world of action from that other place. So for here we've got the Thakic Invocation. Moving up, so Grail has now entered our list of potential level 10 lore. And we have the Rite of the Seas fasting, which we had before, so that's not as important. Okay, we're just going to keep moving on to our work. So the Geminiad. A fragile manuscript, illuminated with twin shapes of sad and luminous beauty, and with all the phrases of the moon. It might be as old as the 7th century, but the language, if you've seen, is much older. Coral decorates its cover, and its page edges are sharp enough to slash a throat. Lock the study door, the work begins. The watchman, who is the door in the eye, waits in my dreams. If I learn the lantern lore and I dream of this temptation, I can achieve my purpose. The need gnaws at me. So this is where we're going to do a painting. At last their fervor is spent. What have they made of this night? Nope. Do I have my restlessness yet? Yes, I do. We might get a notoriety out of this, or in 11 seconds we may, or a little more than 11 seconds, we may wind up with another notoriety, but in this case I'm just going to get the painting done. This should have an impact. The auctioneer's gavel bangs, my item has sold. So we'll do the same trick, and this time we will sell the cipher journal of Alessandro Lacrosse. This oddity is probably worth something, but it's hard to be sure. Okay, percussivant's getting ready to expire, so I should be a little cautious about that. Colors of the night. I could spend money on better paints, or perhaps I could find more exotic pigments. So in this case, we will pay up for the paints. This is a chance for us to make some money. 4 notoriety is kind of the best opportunity, but 3 and mystique is certainly not a problem. And we got a mystique instead of a notoriety, so not too much of a loss there. I am probably going to try resummoning the Percussagant before too long. And what I'd like to do here, if I can, is just try and wait out the end of the the end of the investigation before finishing, because I know we're at our time. I think this might be a fascination, if I recall correctly. Yep. Light leaks through the cracks. My mind is brighter than it ever was. The higher I rise, the more I see. Now, we don't have a Season of Vision, so that's not a worry. I can actually get rid of that with the Fleeting Reminiscence. We'll also get a Fleeting Reminiscence when the Contentment comes. I dreamt of the mantis behind the white door of the great space above the orchard, the space that overlooks the bounds, the space where the vagabond once painted her river. Painted ships passed upon the painted river. I met the painted eyes of a painted captain. She saluted, and the motion was like the layered movement of clouds. The sail of the ship was amber, and the captain's eyes the green of new barley, and the river aquamarine. Now that I'm awake, I see those colors still. Actually, there's going to be something different I do with this fascination, so we're going to head straight back to the stag door. Considering the evidence, this is work I can be proud of. With enough publicity, it will sell. Okay. And we've got the evidence to deal with. So, we will deal with evidence in the next episode. Thank you very much for watching. As always, if you are enjoying the series and have not yet chosen to subscribe to the channel, please consider doing so. You can also turn on the bell to get notifications when a new video is coming up. And if you liked the episode, please consider leaving a like, as those do help me get noticed. And I do enjoy reading your comments. Those also help the videos get noticed. But more importantly, they let me know how I'm doing. They let me know what you're interested in. And overall, it's just been very fun. Even though I've been covering this game for a few years, the Cultist Simulator community is almost universally very pleasant to interact with, and I think it is a very big strength of that game, even when you look at things like the Steam forums. So it's always worth recognizing that, and I thank you. Have a good evening, and we'll see you all tomorrow.